Modeling low-resolution in-game assets. This is going to be mainly the core of this training product, not the complete subject, but one of the main important fundamental principles here is being able to model these objects for your game. Now, the goal with doing this is to create real-time geometry that looks good and performs just as good, if not better. Okay? Now, this is very important. Okay? There's no science to this. There's no 10-step process to doing this. This is an art form. You have to have a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge of what you're doing in order to be able to balance this out. So I really can't tell you a 3-step process, like I mentioned, to get this done. There's a lot of factors that come into play, but I will show you techniques so that you can go ahead and get this done on your own and just create really good geometry that it's going to look nice for the player to look at your graphics and see a great game, but also be able to play a game that plays very well. Okay, so modeling for games. One important principle that I want to mention here is to focus on modeling the overall shape as closely as possible. All right. Now, what does that mean? Well, what that means is that the overall shape, the silhouette of the object, should be modeled pretty close. Now, modeling detail should be left only for important assets. So when you want to use up a lot of triangles, make sure you focus them on something important, like the main character of your game and things that are going to be shown close up to the camera, stuff like that. Topology, very important. Make sure you triangulate your meshes before you go in engine, or else the exporting process will do it for you automatically, and this is not good because it can lead to some problems with your meshes getting triangulated the wrong way. So optimization, very important. Priority of detail. Okay, this touches more on what I just spoke about a moment ago. You want to model detail only on important assets. So, for example, say you have a racing car game. You want to focus your polygons on the car that the player drives in the racing car game, because usually in a racing car game, there's a camera that follows the car from a third-person view very closely, or maybe even an in-dash view inside the cabin of the car. And in that case, you want those assets to be very high-res as much as possible, because that's what the player is going to be staring at all the time when he plays the game. So if that's what the player is going to be looking at, you want to make sure that that object or those objects are the best looking objects possible in your game. Okay? Environment props that are farther from the camera or the point of view of the player should get less detail. So optimizing is very important as well. You should use the least amount of triangles possible in order to optimize things. However, don't be afraid of pushing the limit. Okay? If we were talking about 4 or 5 years ago, yeah, triangle counts have a big impact on the game performance. However, nowadays, most engines, including Unity, can handle a lot of triangles, okay, for next-gen games. Most hardware as well. Most high-end video cards that are coming out on the market nowadays, they can handle very, very powerful games, games that push triangle limits to the max. So don't be afraid of pushing Unity pretty far. Unity can handle a lot of triangles. You'd be very surprised at what it can do. Okay? So don't be afraid to do that. Also, this is one thing. A lot of people, especially newcomers to game development, will ask a very basic question. Okay? How many triangles should I place the limit on for my characters or my environment or whatever it is I'm doing? Well, the truth is, there's no magic number. No one can tell you the exact number of triangles for your game. This differs based on lots of factors. Some factors are the type of game you're making. So for example, let's say you're making a game like Dynasty Warriors. So if you're doing a game where there's a huge battlefield and there's 100 characters on screen at the same time, you obviously will not be able to do a game where each character has 10,000 triangles. You're going to have to reduce the amount of triangles per character. Okay, so that's a factor that could come into play. Also, the target platform and hardware that you're targeting has a huge say in how many triangles you use. So, for example, if you're making a game for, say, an Android phone, your main character in the game is going to have to be a very small amount of triangles. You might have to limit your triangle count to maybe 300-400, something like that. Just depends on the game you're making. Now, if you're making a game for the Xbox 360 or the PS3 or a high-end PC, running the latest, NVIDIA GeForce GTX video card or something like that, then what you're going to need is you can push the triangle counts further. Maybe your main character can be something like 10,000 triangles, maybe more. Just depends on what kind of game you're making. Okay? And there's many more factors that come into play. I can't cover every single one, but that's just to give you a good idea. Okay? So no one can tell you what triangle limits you should put on your characters and stuff. You're going to have to do some R&D. Some basic guidelines are available in the Unity documentation. Keep your main character about 10,000 triangles, give or take a few hundred or a few thousand from that. It just depends on your game. But I definitely encourage you to try to push it to the maximum that you possibly can without hurting performance on your game. You'd be very surprised, again, how powerful Unity actually is.